The day was perfect. Anna had always dreamed of this moment. It was her wedding day, the day she was about to marry the man she loved. The sun was shining, the flowers were blooming, and everything was in place for the ceremony. Guests filled the church, their faces bright with smiles as they waited for Anna to make her grand entrance. She had spent months planning this day, making sure every detail was just right. She was ready for this new chapter in her life. Anna stood behind the heavy church doors, taking a deep breath. Her heart was racing, but it wasn't out of fear, it was excitement. This was it. She could hear the soft murmurs of the guests, the rustling of the flowers, and the music playing softly in the background. Her father stood beside her, holding her arm with a steady grip. He looked at her with proud eyes, knowing that this was the moment she had been waiting for her whole life. The doors slowly opened, and Anna stepped out onto the aisle, her eyes immediately locking with her fiancé, Mark. He stood at the altar, waiting for her with a soft smile on his face. Anna felt a wave of love wash over her. This was the man she had chosen to spend the rest of her life with. He was everything she had ever wanted, kind, funny, and supportive. There was no doubt in her mind that this was where she was meant to be. As she made her way down the aisle, the guests stood and smiled, their eyes filled with joy. Anna's mother was in the front row, wiping away happy tears, while her friends exchanged excited whispers. But amid the happiness, something felt strange. The air seemed to grow thicker, like there was an unspoken tension hanging in the air. Anna pushed the feeling aside, thinking it was just her nerves. But then, just as she was about to reach the altar, a voice suddenly echoed through the church. It was sharp and full of panic. "He's lying. He has another wife." The room went dead silent. Anna's heart skipped a beat, and she froze in her tracks. The guests turned to look in confusion, and Mark's face drained of color. Anna blinked, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. Who could have shouted that? What was going on? Her gaze swept the room, but no one seemed to have moved. Then, Anna's eyes landed on the young flower boy who had been scattering petals down the aisle. His wide, frightened eyes met hers, and he stepped forward, his voice trembling as he shouted again. "He's lying. He has another wife. I saw him with her." Anna's stomach twisted. What was happening? The flower boy, no older than 12, was pointing directly at Mark, his face filled with desperation. The guests were whispering now, their murmurs growing louder and more frantic. Anna's mind raced. Was this some kind of joke? A prank? She turned to look at Mark, who was now standing frozen at the altar. His face was pale, and his mouth hung open, as if trying to find words. But none came. Anna felt the heat rise in her chest. She took a step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is this? What's going on?" Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He glanced nervously at the flower boy, then back at Anna. "It's not what you think," he said quickly, his voice shaky. I'll explain everything, I swear." Anna felt her heart pounding. "Explain? How could you explain this? Why would the flower boy say something like that?" She looked back at the boy, who was still standing there, his eyes locked on Mark. "Why are you saying this?" The flower boy hesitated, taking a shaky breath. I saw him. He's been with another woman. I swear, I saw him kiss her, and I heard him call her by a different name. I didn't want to tell you, but I couldn't let you marry him without knowing the truth." The words hit Anna like a punch to the gut. She couldn't breathe. She looked at Mark, her mind racing. How could this be true? How could the man she loved, who had seemed so perfect, be hiding something like this? Mark took a step forward, his face pleading. "Anna, please. It's complicated. I can explain everything. Just give me a chance." His eyes were filled with fear, but Anna couldn't focus on him. Her mind was spinning, and her hand shook as she clutched the bouquet of flowers tightly. The room was in chaos now. Guests were whispering, some with shock, others with disbelief. Some were already reaching for their phones to record the moment. Anna's world was shattering in front of her eyes, and all she could do was stand there, frozen. The flower boy stepped forward again, his voice shaking. "He's lying to you. He's married to someone else." "I'm not lying. You deserve to know the truth before it's too late." Anna's breath caught in her throat. The truth. What truth? She felt like everything she knew was unraveling. She looked at Mark, but it was as though she was seeing him for the first time. Who was he really? How could she have missed this? Was it possible that he had been living a double life? Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned to her father. "Dad, what should I do?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Her father stood there, his face a mask of confusion and concern. "Anna, I don't know what's going on, but you need to find out the truth before making any decisions." His voice was calm, but Anna could see the worry in his eyes. In that moment, everything changed. The perfect day, the dream wedding, the man she thought she would spend her life with, everything was crumbling. Anna was standing on the edge of a cliff, and she didn't know if she should fall or find a way back. The truth was out there, but Anna didn't know how to face it. All she could do was stand there, torn between love and betrayal, trying to figure out what to do next. The room was filled with a deafening silence, broken only by the quiet whispers of the guests, each trying to process what had just happened. Anna stood frozen at the altar, the bouquet of flowers in her trembling hands. The air around her felt thick, suffocating, and her mind raced with the words the flower boy had shouted. "He has another wife." The sentence echoed in her head, repeating over and over again. Mark stood there too, his face pale, eyes darting nervously from Anna to the flower boy. He was trying to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. He reached out towards Anna, but she instinctively stepped back, as though his touch would burn her. The guests were no longer looking at the bride in her wedding dress, but at the young boy who had ruined everything. Everyone was waiting for an explanation, and all eyes were now on Mark. "Please, Anna, I can explain everything," Mark said finally, his voice shaky. He took a step forward, but Anna held up her hand to stop him. "No," she said, her voice cold. "You don't get to explain anything. Not yet. You owe me the truth." Her words were sharp, and there was a quiet anger building inside her that she could barely control. The flower boy stepped forward again, his face filled with determination. He had been silent up until now, but his eyes were fixed on Mark, and he wasn't backing down. "He's lying to you, Anna," the boy said, his voice steady despite his fear. "I swear, I saw him with my own eyes. He has another wife. He's been hiding her from you." Anna turned to look at the boy, her mind still struggling to comprehend what he was saying. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What do you know about him? Who are you?" The flower boy hesitated for a moment, looking down at the ground before meeting her eyes again. I've seen him before. He was with her, the other woman. She's not just anyone. She's been with him for a long time." He looked around the room, his eyes desperate for anyone to believe him. "I didn't want to say anything at first, but I couldn't keep quiet. Not when you're about to marry him." Anna's chest tightened as the words sank in. She could feel her vision blurring with tears, but she fought them back. She couldn't cry. Not yet. Not until she knew the truth. Mark had been hiding something from her. But how much had he been hiding? And why? She turned back to him, her gaze steady but filled with hurt. "Is this true? Do you have another wife?" Her voice cracked, and the pain of betrayal surged through her like a wave. She could feel her heart breaking with every second of silence that passed. Mark finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "No, Anna, it's not true. It's a misunderstanding. I swear, it's not what it looks like." His eyes were wide with panic, his body trembling as he took another step toward her. Anna shook her head, the pain in her chest growing with every word he spoke. "Don't lie to me," she said, her voice low but filled with anger. "I trusted you. I believed in you. I swear, Anna, Mark continued, his voice pleading. There's an explanation for everything. It's complicated, but I didn't want to hurt you. The flower boy stepped forward again, his eyes filled with conviction. It's not complicated. It's simple. He's been leading a double life. He's been with her for years, and he's never told you the truth. You deserve to know who you're marrying. The truth hit Anna like a slap to the face. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything she had believed in, everything she had been so sure of, was falling apart right before her eyes. The man she was about to marry had been lying to her. And not just any lie. This was the kind of lie that could destroy everything. Mark, why didn't you tell me? Anna's voice broke as she asked the question that had been tearing at her heart. Why didn't you trust me with the truth? Mark looked down at the floor, guilt written all over his face. I didn't want to lose you, he whispered, almost as if to himself. I thought I could keep it hidden, that you'd never find out. But I see now that I was wrong. Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The weight of what she was hearing was almost too much to bear. You thought you could keep a secret this big from me. You thought I wouldn't find out, she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. How long has this been going on, Mark? How long have you been lying to me? Mark opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He looked at the flower boy, then back at Anna, but all he could do was shake his head. He had no words left. The tension in the room was unbearable. The guests, once excited for the wedding, were now in shock. Some looked at Anna with pity, while others looked at Mark with disbelief. It seemed that no one knew what to do. The young flower boy, who had started all of this, was still standing there, looking like he had just saved Anna from making the biggest mistake of her life. Anna's mind was racing. Her world had been shattered in an instant, and she had no idea what to do next. The truth had been revealed, but it wasn't the whole truth. Mark was still hiding something, something that she needed to know before she could decide what to do. Mark, I need to know everything, Anna said, her voice quiet but filled with determination. I need to know what you've been hiding. You can't lie to me anymore. Not after everything that's happened. Mark closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He knew he had no choice now. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. He had to tell her everything. But was he ready to face the consequences of his lies? Anna waited, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed the truth, and she was ready to face whatever it was. There was no turning back for either of them. The silence in the room had now grown suffocating. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Mark, waiting for him to explain the impossible. Anna stood rigid, her hands still clutching the bouquet, her mind struggling to piece together the shards of the shattered reality around her. The flower boy's words echoed in her head, leaving her numb with confusion, but her gaze remained locked on Mark, the man she had once thought she knew better than anyone. Mark, Anna whispered, her voice raw with emotion. What do you mean complicated? There's no excuse for this. You have to tell me the whole truth. Now. Mark's hands shook as he wiped his brow. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unsure of how to begin. His eyes darted to the floor, avoiding Anna's piercing gaze. The weight of the situation was pressing down on him like an iron cage, and he could feel the walls of his carefully built world crumbling. I didn't want you to find out this way, he began slowly, his voice heavy with regret. I thought I could fix it, but everything spiraled out of control. Anna's heart pounded in her chest, and she took a step closer, her voice growing firm. Tell me everything. Now. Mark swallowed hard. He had no choice. He had to tell her, or everything he had worked for would be lost forever. He took a deep breath, gathering the courage he had lacked until now. I met Emily years ago, he confessed, his voice shaking. Before we even met, actually. We were both living in the same city, and we started seeing each other. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but we ended up connecting. She got pregnant, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do. His eyes flicked briefly toward the flower boy, who stood silently with his arms crossed, watching intently. I tried to make it right by marrying her, but I didn't want to lose you, Anna. I didn't want to hurt you, so I kept everything a secret. Anna's blood ran cold as she listened. Every word Mark spoke was like a new stab to her chest. She had trusted him with her heart, and now she was hearing that he had been living a double life, hiding not just a relationship but a child from her. "And how long did you think you could keep this a secret?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper, tinged with disbelief. I thought I could find a way to make both lies work. I thought I could keep Emily happy while being with you," Mark said. He wiped his eyes and looked back at Anna, guilt and shame evident in his features. "But it never worked. I was never truly happy. I was torn between the two lives I was living." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for the next part of the story. Anna could feel her heart breaking, piece by piece. Her entire future with Mark had been built on a lie. And the wedding. Anna's voice was barely audible, the words so painful to speak. "What about this? What did you think was going to happen today?" Mark winced as if she had slapped him. "I thought if I married you, everything would be okay. I thought I could bury the past, start fresh with you. I was wrong. I see that now. But it's too late. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve your trust." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She blinked them away, keeping her composure. "I don't know who you are anymore, Mark," she said, her voice shaky with emotion. "You were supposed to be the person I could rely on, the one person who would never hurt me. And now I find out you've been living a lie from the very beginning." Mark stepped forward, desperate. "Anna, please. I love you. I do. But this situation, it got out of hand. I didn't know how to fix it without losing both of you. And now I've lost everything." Anna shook her head, her mind reeling. She couldn't understand how the man she loved could betray her in this way. He had kept so much from her, and now she had no idea how to fix what had been broken. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice filled with pain. "If you had told me the truth, maybe we could have worked through this together. But you kept it from me for years. How am I supposed to trust you again?" The tears she had been holding back finally fell, streaming down her face. She wiped them away angrily, as if the act of crying itself was a betrayal. How could she have been so blind? Mark's face twisted in agony. "I didn't want to hurt you," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't want to lose you, and I thought if I kept this secret, everything would be okay. I was wrong. I'm so sorry." The flower boy, who had been standing quietly all this time, finally stepped forward. "This isn't just about you anymore, Mark. You've hurt Anna, but you've hurt Emily too. She deserves to know the truth too." Mark froze. His gaze flickered nervously to the flower boy, then to Anna. "I'll tell her," he said quietly. "But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for any of us." Anna could hardly breathe. Everything she had built with Mark now felt like it was slipping through her fingers. The wedding, the future, the love they had shared, it was all shattered in an instant. And yet, the hardest part was still to come. She needed to know what would happen next. She had to know the truth about what Mark had been hiding all this time. As the room remained tense with anticipation, the next few moments seemed to stretch into eternity. Anna's mind raced, her heart torn in 1,000 directions. Could she forgive Mark? Could she trust him again? Or was everything truly lost? The truth was out, but now came the hardest part, the consequences, and Anna was about to face a decision that would change her life forever. The tension in the room was palpable. Mark stood at the altar, his face pale and drawn, while Anna, unable to look him in the eyes, turned away. The truth had been exposed, and with it, the fragile reality they had built together shattered. In that moment, The dream wedding that Anna had envisioned for years had become a nightmare, and the man she loved seemed like a stranger to her. The guests, who had once been filled with excitement, now watched in stunned silence. Anna could hear the soft murmur of whispers, but they didn't register. Her mind was a whirlpool of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. How could Mark have done this to her? How could he have kept such a monumental secret from her, the woman he had claimed to love? The flower boy, still standing off to the side, spoke again, his voice louder this time. "You need to go to Emily, Mark. She deserves to know. She deserves more than this, more than the lies." Mark, his eyes darting between Anna and the flower boy, nodded. He had never felt more helpless. He had hoped that by confessing his mistake to Anna, it would bring some sort of resolution. But he could see it now. There was no fixing this. There was no going back to the way things were. Anna, still unable to speak, turned and walked toward the back of the hall. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor, each step growing louder, more forceful. She couldn't stay there. She couldn't breathe in that place, surrounded by guests who had all witnessed her world fall apart. She needed air. She needed space to think. But as she reached the doors, a hand grabbed her arm. "Mark, please, Anna," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Don't leave like this. We need to talk. We need to fix this." Anna jerked her arm away, her body trembling with the weight of his words. "Fix this," she repeated, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "You think you can fix this, Mark? How? How do you fix a lifetime of lies? How do you fix the fact that you've been living a double life, all while pretending to love me?" Mark opened his mouth to respond, but Anna was already shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. She could hardly look at him anymore. The man she had trusted, the man she had given her heart to, was gone. In his place was someone unrecognizable, someone who had betrayed her in the worst way possible. The silence between them stretched on, unbearable and thick. The guests, once full of excitement for the ceremony, were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The air felt heavy, as though time itself had slowed down, waiting for something, anything, to break the tension. Finally, Anna spoke again, her voice much quieter this time, but no less hurt. "Do you love her, Mark? Is that what this is really about? Do you love Emily?" Mark winced at the question, and for the first time, Anna saw the vulnerability in his eyes. He didn't know how to answer. He had told Anna that he loved her, that he had always wanted to make things right, but deep down, the answer was far more complicated than that. I care about Emily," he said slowly, his voice shaky. "But I love you, Anna. I've always loved you." Anna let out a bitter laugh, the sound foreign to her own ears. "How can you say that, Mark? How can you claim to love me, and then keep something like this from me? Something so big, so important. You knew what you were doing. You knew, and you still lied." Mark's face crumpled with regret. "I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you forever. I was selfish. I was wrong." His words hung in the air, but they weren't enough. They didn't undo the damage, the broken trust. Anna couldn't just forget what had happened. She couldn't just erase the pain she felt inside. "You should have trusted me," Anna said softly, but her words hit harder than she intended. "You should have trusted me enough to know that no matter how bad things were, we could have faced it together. But you didn't, and now I can't even look at you without feeling like a fool." Mark's eyes filled with tears as he took a step forward, but Anna took another step back, holding up her hand as if to stop him. "No, Mark," she said, her voice stronger now. "You don't get to make this right. You don't get to fix this by just saying you're sorry. It's too late for that." She turned away from him, her heart racing, her mind fighting with itself. She had loved this man. She had built her future with him in mind. But now her future felt like an empty void. There was no way back from this. She couldn't just pretend nothing had happened. The foundation of their relationship had been built on a lie, and now it was crumbling beneath her. As she stepped out into the cool air, Anna felt a sense of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of sadness. The man she had wanted to marry, the man she had dreamed of a future with, had just shattered everything. Her dreams, her trust, her hopes for the future, all gone in an instant. The flower boy, who had been quietly observing the chaos unfold, approached Mark slowly. He had said his piece, but now he stood in silence, waiting to see what would happen next. Mark was left standing alone in the middle of the church, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him like a 100-ton boulder. The wedding was over before it had even begun. Anna stood outside the church, her chest heaving with the weight of the confrontation. Her mind was still a blur, struggling to piece together the reality she had just uncovered. The cold breeze brushed against her skin, but she barely felt it. The only thing she could focus on was the flood of emotions surging through her: anger, hurt, disbelief. She had always trusted Mark, believed in him, and now it all felt like a lie, a cruel joke. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, half expecting to see Mark's name, but it was a text from her best friend, Sarah. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she debated whether or not to open it. It felt too soon, too raw, but curiosity won out. She unlocked her phone and read Sarah's message. "Anna, I saw what happened. I don't know all the details, but you're stronger than this. You'll get through it. Don't let him control your story." The words were comforting, but they only reminded her of how deeply everything had been shattered. Sarah was right. Anna was stronger than this, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. She looked up, trying to steady herself, and saw a few people standing in the distance, still lingering by the church's doors. They were watching her, whispers floating in the air, but none of them dared to approach. The gossip had already begun. They had all witnessed the unraveling of her future, and now there was no turning back. But her thoughts were interrupted as she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Mark. He had finally caught up to her. She could hear the desperation in his steps, the quick, unsteady pace of a man who knew he had made a terrible mistake. Her heart pounded in her chest as she braced herself for whatever he was going to say. Would he apologize again? Would he try to explain himself, to justify the lies he had told her for years? Mark stopped just a few feet away from her. She could feel his presence without even turning around. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to stop, frozen in that moment of tension. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice cracking under the weight of his own guilt. "Anna, please, let me explain. I know it doesn't make sense, but I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to tell you the truth." Anna closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to calm herself. She wanted to turn around and scream at him, to tell him everything she was feeling, but she didn't. Instead, she shook her head. "Explain. You want to explain. Mark, you didn't just make a mistake. You lied to me. You lied to me for years about Emily. You kept a whole life from me, and now you want to explain." Her voice shook with emotion, but she couldn't stop herself. Mark's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant for things to go this far. Emily, I didn't want her to get hurt either. I swear, I never wanted this. But when I met you, Anna, I thought I could make it work. I thought I could leave the past behind and build something real with you." Anna's heart broke at the sound of his words, but it was quickly replaced by a rising anger. "So, what, Mark? You thought you could just erase Emily and your past with her? Just pretend like it never happened? And what about me? What about the woman who trusted you with everything?" He stepped closer, but Anna backed away, her eyes not leaving his. "It wasn't like that," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I swear it wasn't." But Anna couldn't believe him anymore. His words were hollow, like empty promises that had been shattered by the truth. He had been lying to her from the start, and now that the truth was out, she couldn't unhear it. She couldn't unsee the man who had deceived her for so long. "I can't do this," Anna whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I can't be with someone who's lied to me, someone who's betrayed me like this. I deserve better. I deserve someone who's honest with me from the beginning." Tears welled in Mark's eyes as he reached out for her, but Anna quickly stepped back, her hands raised in defense. "Don't touch me." For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The pain, the anger, the confusion. It all flooded over her in a tidal wave. But beneath it all, there was one thing that was clear. She couldn't stay in this relationship. She couldn't stay with someone who had made her feel small, who had made her question her worth. Mark's shoulders slumped, and he lowered his hand, his face filled with regret. "Anna, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I'll do anything. I'll fix this. I'll make it right." Anna shook her head, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. "You can't fix this, Mark. You can't fix what you've broken." And with that, she turned away. The church doors were still open behind her, but they felt like a world away. She couldn't go back inside, couldn't face the people who had witnessed the disaster unfold. There was no point in pretending anymore. Her wedding day, the day she had dreamed of for so long, was over. As she walked away, she didn't look back. She knew it was the hardest thing she had ever done, but she also knew it was the right thing. It hurt more than anything she could have imagined, but she had to let go of Mark, and she had to let go of the dream that had crumbled in front of her. And so, as the door to her future closed, Anna stepped forward into the unknown, a woman broken but not defeated, a woman who had the strength to walk away from everything she had once believed in. The following days felt like a blur to Anna. The sun rose, casting a soft golden light through her bedroom window, but it did little to lift the weight pressing down on her chest. Her world had been turned upside down, and every corner of her life now seemed unfamiliar, even hostile. She couldn't escape the echoes of the confrontation with Mark, his pleading eyes, his voice shaking with regret. But deep down, she knew that walking away was the only choice. She had spent the last few days in a haze of unanswered questions. Why had Mark done this? How could he have lied to her for so long? And more importantly, how could she ever trust anyone again? The pain of betrayal ran deep, and every time she closed her eyes, she was haunted by the image of the man she had loved, the man who had now become a stranger. But life didn't stop. The world kept moving, and Anna knew she couldn't stay still forever. So, after several sleepless nights and many moments of self-doubt, she made a decision. She would leave. She would leave the town that held so many painful memories and start over. She packed her things in the quiet of her apartment, the boxes stacked neatly around her, waiting to be filled with the remnants of a life that was no longer hers. Each item she touched seemed to hold a memory, a shadow of the life she had imagined for herself. A few dresses Mark had bought her on their anniversary, a framed photo from their first trip together. The little things that now felt like reminders of betrayal. She took one last look around the room, forcing herself to let go of the past. Her phone buzzed again. She had received a message from her best friend Sarah, who had been checking in on her constantly. "I know you're hurting, Anna, but don't forget to take care of yourself. You deserve happiness, and this is just the first step toward it. Let's meet up when you're ready. You're not alone." The simple words brought tears to Anna's eyes, but they also gave her a sense of peace. Sarah had always been there for her, through the good and bad. She was her rock, and Anna knew that she couldn't walk this path alone. Packing her final things, Anna realized that this wasn't just a physical move. It was an emotional one, too. She was putting everything behind her, everything that reminded her of Mark, and the life she had thought she would have. She was reclaiming her future. As she loaded the last of her boxes into her car, she felt a mix of emotions: fear, excitement, sadness, and hope. Hope that her future could be better, that she could start fresh and rebuild herself without the weight of betrayal hanging over her. She turned the key in the ignition, and with a final glance at the apartment, she drove away. The journey out of town was long, and Anna didn't know where exactly she was headed. She wasn't sure what her new life would look like, but she knew she couldn't stay in a place that reminded her of her broken dreams. The road stretched out in front of her, offering both uncertainty and possibility. Several hours into her drive, Anna stopped at a small cafe in a quiet town. It wasn't much, but it felt like the perfect place to take a breath and gather her thoughts. As she walked through the door, the warm smell of coffee filled the air, and the soft murmur of conversations mixed with the clinking of cups. She chose a table by the window, feeling the sunlight on her face as she sat down. While waiting for her coffee, Anna's mind wandered. She thought about her childhood dreams, the ones she had buried for so long. She had always wanted to travel, to see the world, but somehow her life had become wrapped up in other people's plans, particularly Mark's. She had sacrificed her own dreams to build a life with him, only to find that he had been living in a fantasy of his own. But as the days passed, something in her began to shift. She realized that she didn't need anyone's permission to chase her dreams. Not Mark's, not anyone else's. She didn't have to live in the shadow of his lies. She could create a new future, one where she was in control. Her coffee arrived, and she took a sip, the warmth comforting her. It wasn't the solution to all her problems, but it was a start. She smiled, a small, cautious smile. Maybe this was what freedom felt like. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, a woman approached her table. Anna hadn't noticed her at first, but she now recognized the familiar face of someone who had been sitting at the counter. The woman looked to be around her age, with a friendly smile that made Anna feel a sense of calm. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that you seem like you're going through a lot," the woman said gently. "I don't mean to intrude, but I've been where you are. I've been broken too. If you ever need someone to talk to, or even just someone to sit with, I'm here." Anna's eyes widened, touched by the stranger's kindness. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anyone to understand. But the woman's words resonated with her. "Thank you," Anna whispered. "I think I might need that." The woman sat down with her, and for the next hour, Anna shared her story. The wedding, the betrayal, the heartbreak. And the stranger listened without judgment. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It reminded Anna that she wasn't alone in this world, that there were kind souls out there who cared, even if they were strangers. By the time Anna finished her coffee, she felt lighter. She wasn't healed, not by a long shot, but she was beginning to see a path forward, a path where she could learn to trust herself again, and perhaps, one day, trust someone else. With the first steps toward healing taken, Anna knew she had a long road ahead of her. But the road ahead was hers to walk, and she would walk it with her head held high. Weeks had passed since Anna left the small town, and with each day, she had started to rebuild herself, piece by piece. She was still working through the heartache, the betrayal, and the anger that had consumed her life, but each day brought a new layer of healing. The road ahead was long, but she had learned to take it one step at a time. She had settled into a new town, finding a small apartment with just enough space for her to breathe again. The bright sunlight streaming through her windows reminded her that she was free to live on her own terms now. No more shadowed corners, no more lies. Just her, and the promise of a new beginning. Her job at the local cafe had quickly become a source of comfort, where she met new people who were kind and non-judgmental. The job gave her a routine, and it also allowed her to meet people she never would have crossed paths with otherwise. Anna began to feel a sense of belonging in this new place, though she knew it would take time to truly call it home. But on one particularly quiet afternoon, everything changed. It was the kind of day that felt like time stood still. The cafe was slow, the kind of day when the clock seemed to tick louder than usual. Anna wiped down the counter, her mind lost in thought, as she absent-mindedly worked. Just as she was about to take a break, the door opened with a soft chime. Anna glanced up, and her heart nearly stopped in her chest. Standing at the door was a familiar face, Mark. Her breath caught in her throat, her pulse quickening. He looked just as she remembered him, though there was something different in his eyes. He looked regretful, but that didn't matter to Anna anymore. He had hurt her deeply, and no apology would ever be enough to undo the damage. Yet despite the storm of emotions rising within her, she couldn't deny the shock of seeing him again. Mark hesitated for a moment when he saw her, as if unsure whether he should come any closer. Anna's heart raced, her thoughts scattered in every direction. What was he doing here? Why had he come? She hadn't seen him since the wedding, and she had hoped she never would again. He took a cautious step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Anna, I know this is the last place you expected to see me, but I need to talk to you," he said, his voice quieter than she remembered. She clenched her fists at her sides, trying to maintain her composure. Her mind screamed for her to tell him to leave, to walk out of her life for good. But something in his voice made her pause. It was as if he genuinely needed her to hear him out. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but can you just listen to me for a minute?" he added, his tone filled with desperation. Anna took a deep breath, her chest tight. The words she had been holding back all this time wanted to spill out, but she fought to keep her emotions in check. She nodded slowly, her heart still racing. She had no idea what he wanted to say, but she was about to find out. Mark sat down at the table near the counter, the space between them seeming vast, like an ocean that couldn't be crossed. Anna stood behind the counter, hands trembling as she waited for him to speak. "I've been a fool, Anna. I know that," Mark began, his voice breaking slightly. "The things I did, the lies I told you, the secrets I kept. I wasn't the man you thought I was, and I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I'll never be able to make that right, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." Anna's breath hitched as the words sank in. It was hard to hear him say it, even harder to imagine that the man she had once loved was capable of such deceit. Her mind flashed back to that day, the day she learned the truth. The wedding, the accusations, the feeling of betrayal that had consumed her. The pain was still there, raw and fresh, even now. She didn't know what to say. She couldn't look at him the way she once had. The trust they had built was shattered, and no amount of apologies could change that. Mark continued, his eyes pleading with her. "I've been working on myself. I've been going to therapy, trying to fix the mistakes I made. But that doesn't change the fact that I hurt you. I know you've moved on, and maybe you never want to see me again. But I needed you to hear me say it. I needed to apologize." Anna stood there in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She could feel the tears threatening to spill, but she fought them back. She had worked so hard to get here, to heal, to rebuild herself. She couldn't let him undo all the progress she had made. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but laced with the pain of the past. "Mark, I'm not the same person I was when I married you. I can't be. What you did, it broke me. And no apology will change that. But I have to let it go. For me. I have to keep moving forward." Mark's face fell, but he nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I never expected you to forgive me, Anna. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'll never stop regretting what I did." Anna gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, the air between them heavy with unspoken emotions. She couldn't change the past, and she didn't need him to fix it. She had already started the process of healing, and that was enough. As Mark stood up to leave, he paused at the door. "I hope you find the happiness you deserve, Anna. Truly." Anna watched him leave, the door closing softly behind him. She stood there for a moment, processing the encounter. It was over. The final chapter of her relationship with Mark had come to a close, and it was time to move forward. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't about forgiveness or closure. It was about taking control of her life and her future, and she was finally free. The days following Anna's unexpected encounter with Mark were quiet, almost eerily so. She had expected a flood of emotions to overtake her once she'd heard his apology, But instead, there was only a heavy silence, a space between the past and the present where she was forced to confront the person she had become. As much as the apology felt like it was meant for him, not for her, it didn't change the fact that hearing it had stirred something inside her. But one thing was certain. Anna was no longer the person she had been when she first stepped into that church with Mark, years ago. That evening, Anna sat in her apartment, the soft hum of the city outside her window a reminder that life, as always, was moving forward. The apartment was modest, but it was hers, something she could truly call her own. It wasn't filled with the grand, pretentious decorations she once thought she wanted. Instead, it had simple things: a small plant by the window, a few cherished books stacked neatly on the coffee table, and photographs of her travels. The clutter of the past had been swept away with the mess of her heart. Her phone buzzed beside her, a message notification lighting up the screen. She hesitated for a moment, staring at it, as if it might reveal something important. But the name on the screen made her stomach churn. It was from her mother. "How are you, honey? You haven't told me about your day in a while. Is everything okay?" Anna sighed deeply, setting the phone down. She had been avoiding conversations with her family. It wasn't that she didn't love them. It was just that talking about Mark, about the wedding, and about everything that had happened, felt like opening a wound that had just started to heal. They had all been so happy for her new life with him. And now, it was different. She couldn't even imagine explaining to them that, while she had walked away from Mark and his lies, she still carried a heavy weight. Her phone buzzed again. She picked it up, but this time, it wasn't a message. It was a call. A call she knew would be difficult to answer, but one she had been anticipating for a while. Anna's heart raced as she saw the name flashing on the screen. It was from her best friend, Ella, the one person who knew everything about Anna's past, who had been with her every step of the way. They had laughed together, cried together, and held each other up during the darkest of days. "Hello." Anna's voice sounded distant, even to herself. "Hey, Anna." Ella's voice came through, calm but concerned. "I've been meaning to check on you. How are you doing?" "Really?" Anna's chest tightened, and she inhaled slowly, pushing the emotion down. She hadn't realized how much she needed this call, how much she needed someone to ask her how she was feeling. For so long, she had been carrying everything on her shoulders, making sure everyone else around her was okay. But now, someone was finally asking about her. I'm good," Anna replied softly, trying to sound as normal as possible. "I'm getting through it, I guess." Ella was quiet for a moment before speaking again, her voice gentle but firm. "You know, you don't have to carry all of this alone, right? You don't need to shield people from what you're going through. You've already done that enough. I'm here for you." Anna felt a lump in her throat as she tried to hold back the tears. The pain from the wedding, from the lies Mark had told, from the years she had spent believing in something that was never real, it all came rushing back. But this time, it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't paralyzing. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of it, but also a sense of release. I don't know if I can ever forgive him, Ella. He took so much from me," Anna said, her voice cracking. Ella was silent for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "I know. And you don't have to forgive him if you don't want to. But you have to forgive yourself, Anna. You need to release that anger because it's only holding you back. He doesn't get to take any more of your peace." Anna sat in the quiet of her apartment, Ella's words sinking in. Forgiving Mark seemed impossible. How could she let go of something so painful, something so deeply embedded in her heart? But Ella was right. As long as she held on to the pain, Mark would continue to control her life. And that wasn't the woman she was anymore. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but I'll try," Anna whispered, more to herself than to Ella. "You will," Ella assured her, her voice full of conviction. "And you'll be okay, Anna. You've already done the hardest part, walking away. Now it's time to move forward, one step at a time. The call ended, and Anna was left alone with her thoughts. The room felt warmer now, the silence more comforting. She looked out the window, watching the world go by. It was just another day, but it felt different. The weight on her shoulders had lightened, if only a little. She was still healing, still piecing together the parts of herself that had been broken. But she knew that she was on the right path. And as the night crept in, bringing with it the promise of tomorrow, Anna felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of hope. She stood up, walked over to the window, and gazed out at the world she was ready to embrace. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt strong enough to face it.